Hey guys, in this video I want to take a moment to talk about a really cool pocket knife I picked up. This is the SpyderCo Bug. Now some of you may be looking at this and wondering what you're supposed to do with something like this. I will be talking about use case scenario a little bit later on in the video, and I'll be talking about specs in just a little bit. But just so you know, there was a specific reason that I picked this up. I have a project in mind, and I will be talking about that near the end of the video. If you are interested, you can tune in for that. So just to get into the specs, this is the SpyderCo Bug. It is all stainless steel. It is a slip joint plain edge knife. It is flat ground. The blade is made from 3CR13 stainless steel. The outside body has a satin finish, but it is stainless steel also. It does have a lanyard hole, so you could slip this onto something like a keychain or a necklace. The measurements, fully open, are 2.875 inches. Closed is a 1.6, and the blade itself is a 1.3. Weight-wise, it is 0.4 ounces, so it is less than an ounce, a half an ounce, 12 kilograms. So it's super lightweight. Now it does have the traditional SpyderCo thumb cutout, which is a circular cutout. Just to be clear, you cannot open this one-handed. You do need to have two hands, but it does have that, and it does help when you're opening it with two hands. The knife handle itself does have these two curved cutouts. It's perfect for your finger placement, for your pointer and middle finger, and there is a small section there for your thumb to rest on the blade. One thing to keep in mind, because this is a slip joint, it does not lock. You do need to be aware. Now the way SpyderCo designed it is there is a little bit of a lip near the blade, so if for some reason the blade was trying to come down on you, it in theory would be prevented, but it is something to be aware of when you are using it. It is not a locking blade, and so that is something to keep in mind. I've been using this for about 2 weeks. I have not had any issue with the blade unlocking. It's actually a very firm lock, but in general, you just need to be aware of the direction you are cutting, which is something you need to do with most knives anyway. Now to be clear guys, I did not buy this as a primary knife, or maybe even not necessarily a secondary knife. It is more like a tertiary knife, if that's a thing, I think. And no, you won't be batoning wood with it necessarily, or killing a bear, but to be fair, most knives won't kill a bear. It does come in super handy for cutting things like paracord, for cutting boxes and packages. The blade on it is super sharp, and so for my use, a lot of times, 80 to 90% of the times with my knives, most of what I'm doing in the shop is cutting boxes open and packages. It ends up being a perfect tool for that. So even though you won't be batoning wood with it, you can use it for carving off wood shavings for fire starting uses. And honestly, when it comes to having a knife, for a lot of things that we use our knives for, our blades for, the size is not really as important as just the cutting edge in general. I mean, there are very few scenarios I can think of where the blade size is more important than, the sharpness and that kind of stuff. Now, the big thing, of course, is just the grip in general. And as I mentioned, you can actually get a pretty good grip on it, but you do have to be aware of its limitations. The idea is that this does have a nice cutting surface, and for most people, for most uses, I think it can be handy as a backup. Now, I do bring this up because I do have a primary EDC that I carry. I do carry my Leatherman wingman and a flashlight and all that stuff. But usually that is a primary. I actually end up having a secondary on me at all times. I actually have this pouch that I made that carries a spare smaller flashlight and a smaller Leatherman multi-tool. This one doesn't have a blade. By the way, I do have a video on my YouTube channel on how to make this pouch. If you're interested, I will link that up somewhere in the description or the cards up above. So on a daily basis, I end up walking out of my house with at least 2 flashlights on me and 2 multi-tools, and now a backup knife. And one of the things to keep in mind is while I may have the nicer multi-tool and my flashlight as my primary, one of the things to think about is an emergency situation, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. And that's kind of basically my philosophy on things. I'm probably going to end up giving those tools and things to my wife and my kids. It is one of the things I noticed when I was camping, for example, when my wife or my child would need to go out into the dark to go run an errand or whatever, I would end up giving them my flashlight most of the time. So in an emergency, that is probably what I'm going to do, is end up giving them my flashlight and my multi-tool. And so the idea of having a backup for myself, even though it is a smaller tool, it is something that is probably less efficient, it is something that at least I could figure out how to use and know how to use. And so that is just one reason to keep a backup, other than, breaking blades and stuff like that. Now, just to get into it, one of the main reasons I bought this was to do a custom project that I've been thinking about. If you guys saw my last video, I did a leather cuff with a USB thumb drive on it. It was inspired by Daniel Rubino's video on Windows Central, and I talk about that in that video. I'll link that up also. As I was looking at the USB leather cuff, the thought occurred to me that it might be cool to have a version of this with some survival or EDC type stuff on it. And so since I actually carry several multi-tools in my pocket and on my belt, and I do actually have a couple things on my keychain already also, one of the thoughts was, well, how else can I carry other tools? It just kind of stays out of the way. And so it was just another way, another form of carrying the tool without it necessarily like filling up your pockets or taking up a lot of space on your keychain. Now I know this style is not for everyone. Not everyone wants to pull this kind of style off. I do wear, of course, my smartwatches and my watches with a huge leather cuff on my other wrist, so it just kind of matches that style. It's not for everyone, I get it, but if you're into like Ren fairs or Celtic fairs or even cosplay, it might be something cool to think about. I do plan on playing around with some other ideas I have for survival EDC type stuff. For example, these really cool fire starter rods that I picked up. They're small. I'm thinking about a way to stitch them all on, or even do a design where there's a knife and the fire starter. They actually have multiple uses other than just adding them to like a leather cuff. You can actually use them on lanyards and zipper pulls and stuff. I'll talk about that in another video. Now, while this cuff is just an experiment and I made it personally for me, if anyone is interested in ordering something like this, shoot me a message or post in the comments below. I'll reach out to you, and you can always order something like this for yourself. And if you have any ideas for any other small tools or anything like that that you think would work well on a leather cuff. So that has been my review of the SpyderCo Bug. I will post the Amazon links in the description below. If you're interested in tech, leathercraft, EDC, and multi-tool stuff, be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on my social media. All the links will be in the description below. Thanks for watching. Take care.